Welcome to our Positive Behavior Support Canvas Conference. This is Molly Blair from Student Support Programs and Services. Today we're going to cover implementation planning. So in past conferences we've talked about setting up your team and getting buy-in from staff, how to establish expectations, rules, and lesson plans for teaching those expectations and rules, Tier 1 rewards, discipline procedures, and we've also looked at using Pasco STAR to analyze data and help inform your implementation planning. So today we're really talking about putting it all together and how to go back really systematically and put that plan in place. So if you're following along with your benchmarks of quality for PBS, today we're focusing on that implementation plan. So these are the areas that we're going to cover. So teaching the components of the discipline system to staff, having a plan for training staff on how they will teach expectations, rules, and rewards to students, a plan for teaching students those expectations and rules and rewards.
Have you seen it? No.
As well as booster sessions throughout the year, because we know we'll have to go back and cover things again. Even if we start off the year strong, we always need to go back and reteach. Also scheduling, so those rewards and incentives, when will they occur during the school year? How will we orient new staff and students? And then how will we really intentionally involve families and community partners as we develop and implement our PBS systems? So we know that communication is really essential in getting everyone on the same page and making sure that our stakeholders understand why we're doing what we're doing with PBS. So the more that faculty and staff and families are informed of the events or the behavior patterns across campus on a consistent basis, the more they will feel as though they are part of the change process. In addition, faculty will begin to understand what's happening across campus and even in other classrooms. So what's going on outside their room and maybe how classroom management and some of those behaviors impact the overall campus climate. And this frequent communication with staff as well as with families helps open that dialogue, because we know that sometimes there's a philosophical change that can block the behavioral change from happening, and this contributes to problem solving across campus. So thinking about some of these communication pieces, we know we're talking with staff, we're talking with students, we're talking with families, but some schools have even developed substitute packets or volunteer packets so that other people who are coming on campus and working with kids are informed of the expectations, rules, reward system, discipline, all those components. So training is really crucial for getting everyone on the same page, and that, again, it includes faculty, substitutes, parents, volunteers. And this slide gives you some examples of what you might want to train faculty on. You may not want to cover all these topics at one time, especially because you'll need to be getting feedback as well. So checking along the way to see what people are understanding, where they're still struggling, and what they need more help with. So some suggestions could be doing station rotations like you do with students, or having some things in a large group and then some smaller group practice. Some ideas that schools have used successfully: if you are teaching your faculty maybe how to use a form for discipline, whether that's a classroom managed discipline form or an office managed form, maybe pulling some examples and having people identify where they might correct a form that was filled out incorrectly. And we also want to consider teaching to mastery. So if you have a staff member who's turning in a form and it's not correct, you can send that back to them for correction and feedback as well. So we've got a sample agenda for staff as well as for students. How would we orient them to those systems? And this is an actual example of a staff training agenda. And I posted this on Canvas, so you have this available as a guide if you like. But you see they scheduled some things in a series here. So they have an overview, some feedback on rules, teaching behaviors, the PBS process, as well as orienting people to forms that are used in their discipline process, the data system, and the reward system. So a pretty comprehensive overview for staff at the beginning of a school year to let them know what the system is and how it's implemented on campus. In addition to just orienting staff at the beginning of the year and then along the way as well, it's very important to have a detailed schedule for how you will implement PBS throughout the year. And we know with action planning, if we don't commit to specific actions and say when they're going to happen and who will do them, sometimes things have a tendency not to get done because everyone is just so busy. So having a very detailed schedule and action plan can help. And when you're making those decisions, you want to consider families, community members, student needs, as well as changing those activities and incentives regularly, and of course modeling what you want to see. So I'll show you an example of an implementation schedule for a school. So you see they develop throughout the whole year. And again, this is on the Canvas site, so you can see a little bit bigger version. They start off with their team planning day. They've got a faculty and staff training set up on a couple different days. They've scheduled their PBS team meetings, so every time that team meets, it's scheduled from the beginning of the year on. They're surveying students. So they've decided when they're going to survey students about incentives. They've got additional training dates, when they're going to introduce PBS to their students, and again, when that PBS team is meeting and when they're providing information to parents. So a very detailed schedule. And they've even scheduled their reward events, so when those things are going to occur throughout the school year. So they know at the beginning when those reward events will be occurring, as well as any fundraisers or other kinds of communication or supporting events that occur. And again, this template is on the Canvas site, so that's just something you can use as a guide when you're thinking towards the future with your team. So these are some elements when you are looking at the benchmarks of quality and kind of things to do next for your own school's action plan. Again, we posted on Canvas that sample implementation schedule that you can look at to guide some actions or some planning for your own school. So we're asking that with your team, you would look at that and develop a schedule, or if you already have a schedule for your school, look at it, make sure it still makes sense, and revise anything that you need to revise. And that will be your follow-up from today. If you want to submit those via Canvas, there's a button under Assignments where you can do that, and we will share examples so we can learn from each other. And of course, any action items you come up with, things you want to share with stakeholders, students, staff, or families, can be incorporated in that action plan. And then addressing any of those benchmarks of quality that were lower scoring. So when we looked at the beginning at the benchmarks of quality around action planning and implementation, if there was something that you felt was missing from your school, this would be the time to update your action plan and add those components in. So then just some next steps. We want to remind everybody after you've received that Tier 1 training and you're participating in these monthly Canvas chats, we want to make sure that you're meeting with the team around data and PBS in your building, ideally at least monthly, that there's input and commitment from various stakeholders, so you have staff, administration, students involved, and again that there is that formal action plan that's continually updated and revised according to your data and what needs to be done. And then just some resources. You have those coaching materials that are online through Florida's Positive Behavior Support website. We link all of these for you in the Canvas course. And of course, we're always available to support your team as needed. So I wanted to give some time for the people who are on the chat today, and you can use the chat box to communicate. What challenges have you faced in implementation planning for your building? What obstacles do you see in either developing or carrying out your action plan? And what kind of supports do you feel you need at this time? And then also not just obstacles, but is there something that has been successful for your team as far as making sure that you have that plan in place and that you keep coming back to it? Okay, so some responses here. Finding time to meet can always be a challenge. So we want to think about what team structures are maybe already in place in our building where we can do some of this work so we can get moving on those next steps and use our data to inform us. I hear a lot of people referring to finding time to meet as a challenge. And then some successes. It looks like John Long has had success with creating on-track celebrations and have seen some growth in their on-track students across 2 quarters. Oh, another good one, finding time to support teachers and new employees. So I know some things that schools have reported success with is looking at that implementation plan and setting it up like maybe during the summer, beginning of the school year, for what you're going to do all year long, building in those meetings so that you're not scrambling to find time. And then even maybe, because you know you're going to have new students and new staff along the way, so just setting some dates at the beginning of the year, throughout the year, where you will set aside time to orient new people. Okay, great feedback. I will remain online a little bit longer. This was the end of the formal content that I had for today, but I wanted to give you guys time to work on those implementation plans, since that was really what we're focusing on, and we know time is a challenge. So if you don't have an implementation plan, this would be a great time to maybe start developing out what that might look like for your building. And if you do have one, with your team, come back to that and see, are we on track? Do we need to add or modify anything here? Some great comments here. It looks like from Land O'Lakes High School that reward systems have helped increase attendance, which is very important. And then Bayonet Point has started some tracking with classroom management and attendance and moving forward on some discipline planning. So good to hear. All right, I want to thank you guys for your attention and participation. So at this time, we will transition into some team planning and reviewing those implementation plans. But I will remain online if anyone wants to stay on and ask specific questions or discuss anything relative to your PBS implementation. Thank you guys. Have a good planning session and a good afternoon.